There was a small cemetery on the edge of a quiet American town where the wind always seemed to whisper through the pine trees as though carrying memories. No one else could hear, and in that cemetery worked an older gardener named Thomas whose days passed slowly as he trimmed the grass, swept fallen leaves, and tended forgotten graves with hands that moved out of habit more than devotion, because somewhere along the years, he had lost the faith that once shaped his childhood, and though he never said it aloud, he felt as empty as the earth he turned each morning. And yet on one gray autumn day, when the clouds hung low like a heavy curtain, he noticed something strange beneath the oldest oak. A tiny folded piece of white paper wedged between the roots as if the earth itself was holding it. And when he bent down and lifted it gently, he found words written in shaky handwriting, a prayer asking God to comfort a heart that felt shattered beyond repair. And though Thomas had not prayed in decades, something in the note stirred him so deeply, he had to steady his breath. But he quietly slipped the prayer into his pocket and returned to work, though his mind stayed at the oak tree. And the next morning he found another folded prayer beneath the same roots, and the morning after he found a third, each written in the same trembling hand, asking God for strength, asking for a sign, asking if heaven still listened. And Thomas knew these were not random papers blown in by the wind. Someone was coming here, someone was bleeding sorrow into the soil. And one evening just after sunset, as the sky turned pale gold, he saw her, a young woman, perhaps in her late 20s, kneeling at the base of the oak tree, shoulders shaking with silent grief, her fingers clutching a small folded note. And Thomas wanted to step back to give her space, but something held him still, because he recognized the look in her eyes, the same hollow ache he carried for years. And when she finally rose, leaving another folded prayer behind, he waited until she disappeared beyond the gate before walking to the tree, unfolding the note and reading words that trembled with longing. Father, please let him know I'm still talking to him, because some days missing him feels too heavy. And Thomas felt his throat tighten as he realized she was speaking to her earthly father, not God. And suddenly memories he had buried long ago rose like dust in sunlight. The day he stood beside a fresh grave. The day he swore he would never pray again because God had not saved the one he loved. And yet here he was holding this young woman's grief and hearing his own echo within it. And the next afternoon he waited near the oak tree, trimming branches slower than usual. And when she arrived, her steps hesitant, he gently approached her and said quietly, I've been finding your notes. And she tensed, embarrassed, wiping her eyes, but she did not run. She looked at him with a tenderness rooted in pain and whispered, I just wanted him to know I'm still trying to live even though he's gone. And Thomas nodded, because he understood the language of loss better than any book could teach. He asked her name, and she said Emily, and together they stood in silence beneath the oak tree, as though the branches were sheltering two wounded souls trying to breathe. And Emily told him how her father used to bring her here when she was small, teaching her that cemeteries were not places of fear but places of love where stories never died. And she returned now because she didn't know how to carry her grief alone. And Thomas listened, not as a gardener, but as someone whose heart remembered how to feel. And after she left, he stared at the oak tree and wondered why this spot had become her altar of sorrow, and maybe his as well. And that night, unable to sleep, he carved a small wooden bench in his workshop hands, trembling with purpose, sanding the edges until they were smooth like something meant for healing. And the next morning he carried the bench to the oak tree, placing it gently before the roots, feeling as though he was laying down his own burden beside hers. And when Emily came that afternoon, she froze upon seeing the bench, then turned to Thomas with tears welling in her eyes, because she knew it was for her and for her father, and perhaps for the man before her, who seemed to understand loss without speaking it aloud. And she sat on the bench, running her fingers along the wood, whispering, thank you, through tears. And Thomas sat beside her, not touching, not speaking, simply sharing the silence that felt like a prayer, though neither of them voiced it. And over the following weeks, Emily returned again and again, sitting on the bench, sometimes writing notes, sometimes just breathing, while Thomas tended the grounds nearby, always close enough for her to feel safe, yet far enough for her to grieve freely. And one crisp morning she asked him softly, "Did you lose someone?" And Thomas's breath wavered, because no one had asked him in years, and he nodded, saying, "My wife." And when Emily asked what her name was, he felt something warm and painful rise within him as he spoke Helen, and in that moment, saying her name felt like lighting a candle after decades of darkness, and Emily listened with the same tenderness he had once shown her, and Thomas realized grief shared was grief less suffocating. And as winter neared, Emily placed her last folded prayer at the oak tree, whispering, "I think he hears me now," and Thomas watched her lift her face toward the sky, as though God had parted the clouds, just long enough for her to breathe hope again. And after she left, he picked up the note, opened it, and read the words, "Thank you for sending someone to sit with me." And Thomas knew the note was not written to her father, but to God, and for the first time in decades, Thomas whispered a prayer of his own voice, trembling like a child rediscovering something beautiful he had forgotten. And it was simple: "God, if you are still listening, please receive this broken heart and teach it to hope again." And as he finished, the wind stirred softly through the oak branches, lifting fallen leaves like a quiet promise, and Thomas felt something inside him loosen and warm and alive, and he knew he had returned to the faith he lost, not through a sermon, not through a miracle, but through the folded prayers of a grieving daughter who unknowingly carried him back to God. And from that day forward, Thomas tended the oak tree with a reverence deeper than duty, sometimes sitting on the bench carving new ones to place across the cemetery for others who needed rest, and sometimes standing with Emily when she visited, until her grief softened into peace, and the cemetery no longer felt like a place of endings, but a place of beginnings, where heaven met earth in the quiet gestures of ordinary people. And this is the story of the cemetery gardener who found folded prayers, and in doing so found the God he once forgot. And if this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts below, because someone reading the comments may need the hope inside your words. And make sure you like this video, share it with someone who needs comfort, and subscribe to Faith Light Stories, where we tell stories that remind you that God never leaves us, and that even in the quietest corners of life, His love waits to be found. Welcome, dear friend. This is Faith Light Stories, where every story reminds us that God never leaves us. Please like, share, and subscribe.